Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I don't usually do movie reviews on my channel, but I am a film buff, and because I'm a film buff, that's why I'm into award shows, and that's why I make all those award show videos that I make. In order to do that, I have to see a lot of movies. I see a lot of good movies, and I see a lot of bad movies. And this is the time of year when all movie buffs on YouTube and professional movie reviewers on YouTube are posting best and worst films of 2016 videos, and I thought I'd do the same. However, I'm going to post my worst films of 2016 video first, because I like to get the bad out of the way before I discuss the good. And when going over my list of best and worst for this year, I normally have done top 10s, but this year I had to expand my list to a top 15, because there were so many bad movies that were really bad, and there were so many great movies that were really great. But today we're going to focus on the bad, and boy oh boy do I have some really bad films to talk about. But before I talk about my actual top 15, I'm going to run down through my dishonorable mentions really quick, and I have 14 of them. And here they are. Morgan, The Boy, Trolls, Alice Through the Looking Glass, Free State of Jones, Demolition, I Saw the Light, The Forest, Rules Don't Apply, The Secret Life of Pets, Now You See Me Too, London Has Fallen, Collateral Beauty, and When the Bough Breaks. All these films were bad, but they just weren't bad enough to make it into my top 15. So, let's get started with my actual top 15 worst films of 2016 list. Here we go. Number 15, Keeping Up with the Joneses. This could have been a great spy comedy. Unfortunately, it's not. The movie is so boring, and the action scenes can't even make up for how boring it is. The actors are trying their best. Zach Galifianakis is trying to redeem himself from another film I saw earlier this year that will be in my top 5 when we get to that part of the video. And John Hamm is actually funny in a few scenes, but even the two of them, alongside their respective wives played by Isla Fisher and Gal Gadot, just can't get this movie off the ground. When you have a spy comedy where even the action scenes are boring, you know that you've messed up really badly. And by the time the end credits rolled, I was thinking, thank God, get me out of here. Number 14, The Choice. Nicholas Sparks movies have gotten a bad reputation over the years for being extremely cliched and predictable, and unfortunately, The Choice is just another one of those movies. In fact, out of the Nicholas Sparks movies I've seen, this has the second most ridiculous plot. The first goes to Safe Haven, but this one is almost as ridiculous. Benjamin Walker plays a veterinarian who lives by the beach. He's in a relationship with a nice lady. Then another woman played by Teresa Palmer moves in next door. He suddenly falls for her even though she's dating Tom Welling, and he just pesters her into basically cheating on her boyfriend with him and him breaking up with his girlfriend so that he can pursue her. How are we supposed to root for a relationship like that? And then this movie has one of the most awkward marriage proposal scenes I have ever seen. I'm just thinking to myself, who on earth would make a marriage proposal like this? And then, of course, like most Nicholas Sparks movies, there's a character on the verge of death cliche. I'm not going to go into any more detail about it, because to discuss it is to just go into territory so ridiculous that I'm not going to talk about it. The Choice is just another Nicholas Sparks movie that has all the cliches you expect in a Nicholas Sparks movie, and audiences are getting tired of it. And this movie actually bombed at the box office to the point where Nicholas Sparks' production company got shut down. So after this, we may never have any Nicholas Sparks movies ever again. Number 13, the Angry Birds movie. Now, I knew that this movie was not going to be high art. I knew it wasn't going to be on the level of a film like, say, Zootopia. But I thought, even though it's based on an app, maybe it'll at least be a decent movie, because the animation looked nice in the trailer, and it had an impressive voice cast of Jason Sudeikis, Maya Rudolph, Kate McKinnon, Josh Gad, Danny McBride, Peter Dinklage, and Sean Penn. Yes, Sean Penn is in this movie, but all he does is grunt. And honestly, that's how I felt after watching this movie, because this movie is so boring. I have never been this bored in an animated movie in my whole life. I was squirming in my seat just waiting for it to end. And the story is just so ridiculous. First you have the anger management story involving the character Red, played by Jason Sudeikis, and admittedly that was kind of interesting. Then you have the second story that becomes the main conflict, where a group of green pigs led by Bill Hader invades the Birds Island and wants to take it over, and they have to fight back using slingshots and stuff like that. And they also have to try and recruit this hero named Mighty Eagle, played by Peter Dinklage. Admittedly, Dinklage was the funniest thing about the movie, and some of the other voice actors like Jason Sudeikis and Josh Gad were fine. But this story is just so ridiculous that it proves that we don't need to have animated movies based on computer apps. We're getting the Emoji Movie in 2017. And boy oh boy, that's probably going to be a whole lot worse than this. Seriously, Hollywood, stop using computer apps to make money. They don't work as movies. And this movie is proof of that. Number 12, Ben-Hur. When you have a film from 1959 that won 11 Academy Awards, an all-time record matched by only 2 other films, and is hailed as one of the greatest films of all time, is there really a need for a remake? No, absolutely not. But we got one anyway. Now, to be fair, this remake of Ben-Hur does have a few good elements. There are some decent performances, mainly Jack Huston, Toby Kebbell, and Morgan Freeman, and the costume and production design are somewhat decent, but that is not enough to make up for all the flaws in this movie. Many of the iconic scenes from the 1959 version of Ben-Hur, when they're recreated here, are done so badly that they're downright insulting. If you don't know the story of Ben-Hur, it's about a Jewish prince named Judah Ben-Hur who was betrayed by his best friend Messala, a Roman soldier, and sold into slavery. And during his initial years in slavery, a mysterious figure saves his life, and that mysterious figure is none other than Jesus. And then a few years later, Ben-Hur gains his freedom and becomes a master chariot racer, where he ends up racing against Messala, but he's fueled by such a strong desire for revenge against Messala and everyone else who has done him wrong that he begins to alienate all those around him. And it's through another encounter with Jesus, mainly at the time of his crucifixion, that Ben-Hur realizes the errors of his ways. All of that is poorly recreated here. The infamous rowing scene when Ben-Hur's a slave, which was so well shot and edited in the 1959 version, is shot and edited so poorly here. And they use shaky cam to try and make it more dramatic, when it only makes it dizzying. And if using shaky cam in the rowing scene was bad, it was even worse during the iconic chariot race. In the 1959 film, the chariot race was this epic 10-minute spectacle where we could not only see the actors' faces, but we could also see and feel the intensity of the race itself. Here, they barely show the actors' faces. When they do, they try to make up for dramatic effect by having them yell, "Yah! Yah! Yah!" something they never did in the 1959 version. And most of the time, they just put the camera underneath the horse's legs so that we only see the bottoms of the chariots. And they use shaky cam so much that it literally gave me a headache. And it would give anyone else a headache watching it. And then near the end, with Jesus' crucifixion, it barely shows in the movie, whereas in the 59 version, it was a major part. And the ending, spoiler alert, where Judah Ben-Hur's mother and sister are cured of leprosy through magical rain, it actually makes sense in the 1959 version, but here it comes across as just sappy. And then the final scene of this remake of Ben-Hur is the most insulting. It tries to act like the whole film never even happened. If you see the movie, you'll know exactly what I mean. But when you have a scene that tries to make it as though the whole rest of the movie never even happened, what was the purpose of even making it? And the director of this movie, Timur Bekmambetov, he has such a poor track record as a director that I don't know why the hell he was even hired to direct this. This movie had a $100 million budget, and it couldn't even make that at the worldwide box office. And it deserved to bomb because this is one of the most pointless remakes ever made. Number 11, God's Not Dead 2. Now, I am a Christian, and I do think good Christian films can be made. But movies like God's Not Dead and God's Not Dead 2, which are made by evangelical Christians who are mainly trying to appeal to those who agree exactly with what they're preaching, give all Christians and Christian films a bad name. This film is so asinine in its narrow-minded portrayal of Christians and atheists that anyone who watches it, of any religious faith, or even no religious faith at all, will probably be offended by how everyone is portrayed in this movie. And they should be offended, because this is trying to portray schools as places where atheists are born, and these atheists will want to stamp out all religious freedom in America and prevent all children from learning about religion, particularly Christianity. Because the whole point of this movie is Melissa Joan Hart plays a social studies teacher at a public high school who gets suspended from her job because she talked about Jesus in her classroom, and all her coworkers and principals hate religion so much that they just want to stamp it all out, and she files a lawsuit against them, and the lawsuit goes from her trying to get her job back to whether or not God is dead. What kind of storyline is this? And while some of the acting is good, the rest of the acting, particularly from the atheists who want to destroy all religion, is so hammy and scene-chewing that it's just ridiculous. I don't see how any director could have found that kind of acting acceptable in a movie. But here they just want to pump out the movie, get these evangelical Christians to sing its praises, and also throw in some Newsboys promotion, because this film, like the first God's Not Dead, has lots of references to the Christian rock band Newsboys, and the Newsboys themselves appear in the film, and like the first film, the last 10 minutes are of a Newsboys concert. All of these reasons are reasons why the God's Not Dead franchise has gotten such a bad reputation, and deservedly so. And please don't make a God's Not Dead 3. If you want to make a good Christian film, make one that can appeal to all Christians, not just a small group. Because Christianity is made up of many different kinds of people, and not all aspects of Christianity are the same. So try and make a film where at least something can appeal to everybody, and that actually has a relevant message that's timely for our world. Number 10, How to Be Single. This is one of those movies that tries to take a huge cast and pigeonhole them to put into the stereotyped roles of being a single person. You have Dakota Johnson as the woman who breaks up with her college boyfriend so she can experience being single, but then she wants to get back together with her ex-boyfriend. You have Rebel Wilson as the annoying sidekick character who is supposed to have pearls of wisdom, and the movie wants you to think she's a wise person, but she comes off as extremely annoying and unlikable. Then you have Leslie Mann as Dakota Johnson's older sister, who for a long time never wanted to have kids of her own, but then all of a sudden decides she needs to have kids and gets pregnant via an anonymous sperm donor, and then starts dating a younger guy who she then has to come clean to about her anonymous pregnancy. Then you have Alison Brie as the woman who so desperately wants to get married, she'll marry the first guy who will say yes. And then you have Damon Wayans Jr. as the widower with a young daughter who still can't get over the death of his wife. This movie wants you to believe that these are the only types of single people in this world. Get the hell out of here. People are single for a wide variety of reasons. And it's disgraceful that this movie would try to pigeonhole all single people into being part of only these few groups. Plus the way in which this movie tries to tie everyone together, as these types of big ensemble movies usually do, is just so ridiculous that you're thinking to yourself, really? That's the best you could do? Really? And of course they had to release this movie around Valentine's Day thinking, oh, couples will just go see it because it's Valentine's Day, and because it's Valentine's Day, they won't care about any of this. No. People who saw this movie did care about the bad things they saw in it, and I really, really hope that they don't make a How to Be Single 2. So far they have not yet announced it, but I really, really hope that it never, ever happens. Number 9. Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. The fact that this movie is based on a story where two brothers posted an ad on Craigslist looking for dates to a wedding should be a big warning sign that this movie is going to be bad. The trailers were certainly bad, but oh my god, even the trailers could not prepare me for how bad this movie was. The two brothers, Mike and Dave, played by Zac Efron and Adam Devine, are really, really immature and annoying. And you understand why their parents are like, we're so sick and tired of you ruining all these parties. You can only come to your sister's wedding if you bring some nice girls with you. And of course, the nice girls they get are in fact rude, lazy slobs, named Tatiana and Alice, played by Aubrey Plaza and Anna Kendrick. And they only want to go to this wedding so they can get a free trip to Hawaii. And then once they're in Hawaii, all sorts of shenanigans ensue, like riding four-wheelers and the bride getting horribly injured, but yet her face is almost magically fixed the next day, going to a massage parlor where the masseuse is a giant pervert, and no masseuse ever acts like that in real life, and if they did, they'd be in jail. And a rehearsal dinner where the brothers fight and their microphones turn on and everyone hears them. And Anna Kendrick getting high on ecstasy, which is supposed to be funny, but it's just downright bewildering to the point where you're thinking, why the hell is this even in the movie? Raunchy, immature humor can be funny when it's done right, but when it's just thrown in here just to be raunchy, immature humor, it's not funny. And if Hollywood seriously thinks that all audiences automatically enjoy this type of humor, they need to seriously grow up. Number 8. The Darkness. A horror movie where an autistic boy steals a sacred object and becomes possessed by it. Yes, that is really what the premise of this movie is. But that's not the most insulting thing about this movie. The most insulting thing about this movie is the fact that they portray autism in such an offensive manner. Like, this kid doesn't really talk, doesn't go to school, and is basically just considered helpless by his parents because of his autism. And even when he starts doing weird things due to the fact that he's possessed by this object, his parents just shrug it off as him being autistic. Why? What the hell? Plus, there's a shoehorned-in storyline about the older teenage sister having anorexia that's quickly forgotten about, and the last act of this movie where they have to save the boy from the object is nothing but a ripoff of Poltergeist. So when you have a movie that has an offensive portrayal of autism and is a shameless ripoff of Poltergeist, you know that they put absolutely no effort into this movie. And this movie was made by Blumhouse Productions, which does not always have the best reputation of making good horror movies. And the fact that they got Kevin Bacon, Radha Mitchell, Jennifer Morrison, Matt Walsh, Paul Reiser, and Ming-Na Wen to be in this movie, I just don't get it. I really don't. Jason Blum, please stick to producing movies like The Gift and Whiplash. Stop making these cheap horror movies that are automatically going to be a hit at the box office because of how cheap they're made, but have lazy writing, lazy directing, and horrible, offensive portrayals of people. Stop doing this. Number 7. Ride Along 2. I'd hated the first ride-along. It was my #1 worst film of 2014. So, I don't really know why I even bothered going to see this. I thought maybe it will at least be slightly better. But no, this film is just as annoying as the first one. Kevin Hart is running around, screaming, being annoying, and causing all sorts of trouble. Ice Cube is his soon-to-be brother-in-law, who is as annoyed by Kevin Hart as the audience is and has to go in and clean up his messes. I forget the woman who plays Kevin Hart's fiancée, and she's a very gorgeous woman, but she's given nothing to do. All she's doing is just planning her and Kevin Hart's wedding. Then you have Sherry Shepherd as the wedding planner who keeps arguing with Kevin Hart about flowers. And you have Olivia Munn, who's thrown in just to be the love interest for Ice Cube. And then with the whole busting a drug kingpin story that's supposed to be the basis of the film, they even go so far as to rip off an iconic scene from Apocalypse Now. There's a scene where we see Kevin Hart slowly rising out of the water. He's literally ripping off the scene in Apocalypse Now where Martin Sheen rises out of the mud to kill Marlon Brando. When you have to shamelessly rip off Apocalypse Now and be extremely annoying and have the story be extremely cliched and predictable, you know your movie was made with no effort and made just to make more money because the first one was such a huge hit at the box office. And a Ride Along 3 is already in development now because of this. God help us all. Number 6. Why him? This story's been done a million times before. A father finds out his daughter has a boyfriend. The daughter never told her father about her boyfriend. The father, his wife, and the younger sibling go to meet the boyfriend, and he turns out to be extremely, extremely annoying. Bryan Cranston plays the father here, and I thought he was fine for what he had to do in terms of the script. I can understand Bryan Cranston wanting to be in a comedy after doing dramatic TV and movie work for a long time, although he has done comedy before with the TV show Malcolm in the Middle. But the rest of the cast either has nothing to do, like Megan Mullally, or, in James Franco's case, is extremely, extremely annoying. He plays this internet billionaire who lives in this really nice house, but he has a really weird lifestyle. Yeah, we haven't seen that before. And he's just so annoying that, like Bryan Cranston's character, you just want to punch him in the face and say, "Shut up!" And like Bryan Cranston, you wonder why the hell the daughter even sees any good in him. I have no kids, but if I did, I sure wouldn't want any daughter of mine dating James Franco's character here. They even have a cameo from Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons from Kiss, and even that isn't cool in this movie. How do you make a cameo from members of an iconic rock band not look cool? And Keegan-Michael Key. I love Keegan-Michael Key, but he was so bad in this movie. He played this character named Gustav, who has this weird accent. Sometimes it sounds like a German accent, other times an Indian accent. Just pick one accent and stick with it. This movie adds nothing original to the father hates his daughter's boyfriend movie, and if more of these movies are continued to be made, please at least add some originality. Number 5, Gods of Egypt. This film was doomed from the beginning, mainly due to the outrage surrounding the whitewashed cast, because you have white actors playing Egyptian gods, when in reality they should have been played by Middle Eastern actors. But even worse is the storyline. Nikolai Coster-Waldau plays a god who's set to become king, and his eye is stolen by his brother, played by Gerard Butler, and now Nikolai Coster-Waldau has to team up with a mortal, played by Brenton Thwaites, to get the eye back, and Brenton Thwaites only agrees to do it if Nikolai Coster-Waldau will rescue his girlfriend from the afterlife. And in the process, they have to seek help from the sun god Ra, played by Jeffrey Rush, who lives on a giant spaceship where he has to stop a giant space worm from eating the Earth every night. Where in ancient Egyptian mythology is there a story about a giant space worm? I don't recall there ever being such a story. Not only is the acting terrible in this movie all around, with the exception of Jeffrey Rush, who is trying, given that he's the only Oscar winner in the cast, but the story is ridiculous, and the visuals, oh my god. Yeah, the visuals look all bright and beautiful, but they look too bright and beautiful. That's how obvious the CGI is, and at times this movie looks more like a video game than a movie. When I'm watching a movie, I want to watch a movie, not a video game. And the director, Alex Proyas. When this movie got trashed by critics as it deserved to, what did Alex Proyas do? He just whined like a baby and said, critics are stupid because they didn't get his movie, and as a result, they're diseased vultures. When you insult film critics by calling them names like that, you've lost your standing. It doesn't matter what films you've directed, and Alex Proyas has directed some critically acclaimed films in the past like The Crow, Dark City, and I, Robot. But due to his comments and the fact that Gods of Egypt bombed so badly, I don't think any major studio is going to hire Alex Proyas for a long time, and deservedly so, because with a movie like this, the director is the one who has to take the burden and the responsibility of how bad it is, and that's something Alex Proyas won't do. But he needs to do, because it's his fault that all of this stuff happened. Number 4, Masterminds. This movie had one of the absolute worst trailers I have ever seen in my life. I could not believe how bad the trailer for this movie was, but I thought I should still give it somewhat of a chance because you have a cast like Zach Galifianakis, Kristen Wiig, Owen Wilson, Jason Sudeikis, Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones. And it was directed by Jared Hess, who directed one of my favorite films of all time, Napoleon Dynamite. But no, this movie was not just as bad, but even worse than the trailers implied it would be. Zach Galifianakis has the fakest looking wig I've seen in a movie all year. I know some people say Julia Roberts' wig in Mother's Day was even more fake, but I did not see Mother's Day, so I can't make the comparison here. But not only does Zach Galifianakis' wig look really fake, but he has one of the worst southern accents I have ever heard in a movie. Like, he sounds like a stereotypical redneck hillbilly. Who talks like that? I have southern relatives, and they don't talk like that. The rest of the actors, like Kristen Wiig, Owen Wilson, Jason Sudeikis, they try to do their best, but given how horribly the movie's written and the fact that their characters are all depicted as just horrible pieces of trash, even they can't give a good performance in this movie. Leslie Jones tries her best, but she's just stuck being Leslie Jones. And Kate McKinnon. She sounded so bored in this movie that it was painfully obvious she did this movie just for the money. Her voice is literally like this. You can tell she's just thinking, give me my paycheck and let me go home. Even if you do take a movie role just for the money, at least put some effort into your performance. And the storyline of this movie is supposedly based on a true story, but from the way it's depicted, it's just downright ridiculous. Zach Galifianakis and Kristen Wiig are armored truck drivers who decide to steal $17 million from the banks that they drive money to. Owen Wilson helps them do this, but Owen Wilson wants the money for himself, so he tells Kristen Wiig to trick Zach Galifianakis into going to Mexico all by himself, so that way the authorities can catch him and that he can take the full blame for it. And then Zach Galifianakis finds out after an assassin played by Jason Sudeikis comes to kill him and then befriends him. And then they try to rescue Kristen Wiig from Owen Wilson. And this movie has some of the most unfunny scenes I've seen all year. Namely the scene where Kristen Wiig gropes Zach Galifianakis so that her boss will have no choice but to fire her. And worst of all, the scene where Zach Galifianakis is in Mexico, eats a bunch of tacos, gets in the pool, and has a massive bout of diarrhea. How is that funny? That's gross and disgusting. Jared Hess, how do you go from Napoleon Dynamite to this? How did all the actors think this could possibly be a funny movie? Or did they all just do it for the money? I honestly don't know. But this movie never should have been made. It was delayed for a long time because its studio, Relativity Media, went bankrupt, and now that they're trying to climb out of bankruptcy, they're releasing all their bad films first. All of the people in this movie should be ashamed of it. And they probably are, because there was virtually no promotion for this movie. And the less said about this movie, the better. Number 3, The Boss. Why does Melissa McCarthy keep going back and forth from being in a really funny movie to being in a really awful movie? This is the worst movie she's ever done in her whole career. Yes, it's worse than both Tammy and Identity Thief. Her character, Michelle Darnell, is the most annoying, unlikable, unethical character she has ever played, and yet this movie tries to manipulate you into thinking that she is a good person and that she can make a difference. She gets arrested for insider trading, then when she gets out, she bullies her former assistant Claire, played by Kristen Bell, into letting her move in with her and her daughter, and then she decides to help Claire's daughter, who's a Girl Scout, improve their brownie sales, and Michelle Darnell decides she's going to start her own brownie company. And Peter Dinklage plays Michelle's old rival who wants to steal her business and make it his own. Michelle Darnell is such an unlikable character that I don't understand how anybody can think that she's funny or redeemable in any way. Kristen Bell's character Claire is such a pushover that you just want her to stand up and say, "No, no, I won't let you do this." And Peter Dinklage, he was so over the top that I actually kind of laughed at some of his scenes. But still, Peter Dinklage, why do you have to do these movies on your break from Game of Thrones? I get you might want to do something that's totally different, but at least pick a good script. Don't just go for the money. And there's this one scene where there's a Girl Scout fight that happens, and no consequences happen because of it. Nobody gets in trouble with the law. It doesn't even get reported on the news. The only reason why this movie's not higher is because there are two movies that were so bad they had literally no redeeming value whatsoever. Number 2, The Brothers Grimsby. I was surprised at first at just how badly this movie bombed on its opening weekend, given that most audiences have liked Sacha Baron Cohen's raunchy comedies in the past. But then I saw it for myself, and I understood exactly why it bombed so badly. This movie is so vile, disgusting, and stereotypical that I'm honestly surprised studios were fine enough to let this get into theaters. First of all, this movie employs some of the absolute worst stereotypes of working class people in England. All these people do is have lots of kids, drink a lot of beer at the pub, and watch football, or soccer as we call it, on TV, which is pretty much what Sacha Baron Cohen's character is. He has this brother played by Mark Strong who was put in foster care as a kid, and now he's this big super spy. And when Sacha Baron Cohen goes looking for him and ends up ruining his mission, they now have to team up together to get the mission accomplished. And as a result of that, some of the worst scenes I have ever seen in my life are played out on screen, namely a scene involving an elephant. And anyone who's seen The Brothers Grimsby will know exactly what I mean, because that scene was so disturbing, I'm not even going to discuss it. But all of you who've seen The Brothers Grimsby, you know exactly what it is and just how disturbing it was. And I honestly don't know how anybody could find that scene funny. If you do, you must have the weirdest sense of humor in the world. And the worst thing about this movie are the jokes about AIDS. They have a kid in this movie who has AIDS, and he coughs up blood, and the pathogens get spread to other celebrities who are at this big soccer match like Daniel Radcliffe and Donald Trump. And not only are the actors who are playing those celebrities looking nothing like them, but the movie has to even add a disclaimer reminding people that these people don't have AIDS in real life. When your movie has to add that kind of disclaimer, it knows that it pretty much failed at everything and that it deserves to get scorned by the critics and fans alike. And Penelope Cruz, like Kate McKinnon in Masterminds, she was clearly doing her small role just for the paycheck. And while she put a little more effort than Kate McKinnon did, I just can't understand why she, of all people, would want to be in a movie like this. Is she a fan of Sacha Baron Cohen's? I just don't get it. Everything in this movie was just so disturbing that even Sacha Baron Cohen's most diehard fans won't be able to defend this. Seriously, Sacha Baron Cohen, just stick to playing supporting roles in movies like Hugo and Les Miserables, because there, you're actually paired with good directors who can get a good performance out of you. Seriously, stop making these raunchy comedies. They don't work. But as vile and disgusting as The Brothers Grimsby was, nothing was worse than my #1 film. Number 1. Dirty Grandpa. Virtually everyone I know who loves movies and has seen this has this as their #1 worst movie of the year, and I applaud them for that, because this movie is one of the absolute worst movies I've ever seen in my life. I'm not kidding. Robert De Niro plays the most vile, disgusting, racist, sexist, homophobic grandfather you will ever see in your life. He literally is the worst movie grandfather of all time. His wife died of cancer, and the day after he bullies his lawyer grandson, played by Zac Efron, into driving him to Florida so that he can have sex with every college girl he lays his eyes on. And when he gets there, he meets Lenore, a college girl played by Aubrey Plaza, who is so horny that all she wants to do is just have lots of sex with Robert De Niro because she finds old guys attractive. And her friend, Shadia, played by Zoe Deutsch, happens to be an old girlfriend of Zac Efron's. And Zac Efron, meanwhile, is getting married to this materialistic, uptight, nasty woman named Meredith, played by Julianne Hough. And of course, she treats him like garbage. Seriously, how are we supposed to like any of these characters? Nothing likable about them is shown at all. Robert De Niro's character, Dick Kelly, is a bad character for all the reasons I just mentioned. Zac Efron's character, Jason, is such a pushover that you just want him to say, "No, Grandpa, no." Lenore is so horny that she is every cliched nymphomaniac you have ever seen in a movie, and Shadia is this hippie who acts like she lives in the 60s, and we're given nothing for us to root for her and Zac Efron to get together. But the absolute worst character in this movie is Pam the drug dealer, played by Jason Mantzoukas. Pam the drug dealer is so annoying. His voice is annoying, his actions are annoying, his whole presence is just annoying. He sells drugs to middle school kids, he goes to jail, but the police let him go scot-free. He tricks Zac Efron into smoking crack, and as a result, Zac Efron wakes up naked on the beach with a giant fuzzy toy bee covering his area. What happens after that is so bad, I'm not going to speak of it, because it's so disturbing that it's one of the worst scenes I've ever seen. And the fact that everyone else in the movie theater was laughing hysterically, I just don't understand that at all. How do people find that stuff funny? I really don't get it. Pam the drug dealer is such a bad character that he makes all of Kevin Hart's bad characters look like Mr. Rogers. And then the ending of this movie is downright infuriating. So Zac Efron finds out that Julianne Hough cheated on him with his cousin and that she had no regrets about it, so he breaks up with her and goes after Zoe Deutsch to win her over. And then Robert De Niro and Aubrey Plaza get married and have a baby, despite their 50-year age difference. I know that can sometimes happen in real life, but their relationship is not a good one because it's just physical lust. They just want sex, sex, sex. There's no emotional connection between them whatsoever. I hated this movie so much that I could honestly go on for 5 hours talking about why I hated this movie. Because every single scene is bad. There is literally nothing redeemable about this movie. This movie makes almost all the other movies on my bad list look like Oscar-winning masterpieces by comparison. Even my #1 worst film of 2015, Hot Pursuit, looks Oscar-worthy compared to Dirty Grandpa. If you honestly like Dirty Grandpa, please give me legitimate reasons why. Don't just go, "I like raunchy humor. I like seeing Robert De Niro and Zac Efron together." Those aren't legitimate reasons. Give me reasons why this story worked. Give me reasons why these jokes were funny. Almost nobody has been able to do that, and if you can, more power to you, but I don't see how that can possibly happen. Because this movie is one of the worst movies of all time. Trust me, in 50 years, it will be ranked up there with Battlefield Earth, Jack and Jill, and every other movie that has the reputation of being one of the worst movies of all time. That's all I have to say for now, but please let me know in the comments section below what your worst movies of 2016 were, and stay tuned tomorrow where I can celebrate the 15 best movies of 2016. See you then. Bye.